Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this webinar about local government leadership in Australia's energy transition. Let me start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the many lands on which we're meeting today. This is the national webinar series, so there's people joining us from all over Australia. I'm also currently sitting in Aotearoa, New Zealand, so I'm probably the outlier in this group today, but I do spend most of my time in Meanjin in Brisbane. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, as well as emerging community leaders, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are in the room with us in this session. So welcome to the Just Transition webinar series. This is session 2, and I'll go into a bit more detail about it shortly. But first, I just wanted to provide a bit of an overview of the transition series overall. So Capire Consulting Group are hosting these 6 sessions over this week on multiple different topics around the energy transition, but really focused on that community engagement and ensuring that our communities have a just energy transition, and really highlighting and spotlighting a lot of the conversations that are happening in this space from the unique perspectives we have across Australia and across borders. So this is the second of those 6 sessions. And personally, I think it's on the most interesting topic, but I am a little bit biased in that space. This is the local leadership session. So before I let you go at the end of our time today, I'll step through some of the speakers and a bit more in depth of the different topics we have coming up for the rest of the week. But for now, let me introduce the session that we find ourselves in currently. Oh, I'm going to go back to those other slides in a moment. Okay, so local leadership is around local councils and their leadership in Australia's shift towards renewable energy. The shift is happening really quickly, and local governments have a really unique and important role to play in that. So today we're bringing together local government sector leaders from across the country to share real stories, practical lessons, and honest reflections about what it takes to support communities through the change. We are going to be focusing primarily on utility scale renewable energy projects, the wind farms, solar farms, transmission and storage developments that are reshaping regions across Australia. But councils may not always control the approvals, but they do play a critical role in helping the transition feel fair, informed, and beneficial for their communities. So wherever you're joining from, if you work in local government or alongside councils in industry, government, or the community sector, we're really hoping that you leave with a few ideas, some reassurance, and a stronger sense of how we can work together to deliver better outcomes for our communities. So I'd love to hear from you what brought you here. If you wanted to drop that in the chat, where are you based and what brought you into the room today? While you're adding some of those thoughts into the chat, I would like to go just over a couple of little housekeeping details for our session. Please use the chat as much as you can and want to throughout the session. Even for clarification, and if there's something really interesting that our panelists are talking about and you want to dive deeper, the chat is a really good way to kind of draw our attention into that space. Reach out to Matt. Matthew Gordon is with us from Capire, not Councillor Matt Burnett, who's one of our speakers. Reach out to Matt Gordon if you drop out or your questions won't come through, anything like that. He's your tech person today. Our session will be recorded. We will be sharing this with the broader group that have registered for the session and weren't able to make it. We'll be sending that out far and wide. I will get the speakers' permission to facilitate and keep us to time because we only have 1 hour together and I want to make sure we really, really make great use of it. And then I also just wanted to note that anything we talk about here today, the curlier the question, the better, but please bear in mind that the views are of individuals and not necessarily the organisations, councils that they work for and with. All right, so now that housekeeping is out of the way, let's get into it. I wanted to introduce you a little bit to Capire. If you haven't heard of Capire or worked with Capire before, we are one of Australia's largest community engagement firms, and our purpose is to help clients understand their communities to create positive outcomes. We're a leading voice in engagement practice throughout Australia, and through our work, we deliver tailored strategies for projects, policies, and places. We have a really strong history in the energy sector, but we just absolutely love working with communities and government through the transition, or as they said at the plenary session yesterday, the transformation to renewable energy. Okay. So just a bit of a framework for how we're going to spend our time today. To guide our conversation, we're going to be hearing a few reflections from our speakers, and then we'll move forward into a bit of a moderated discussion before opening up for questions and shared insight. So I encourage you to note down your questions as we progress through the speaker reflections and into the dialogue. So please use the chat again and the Q&A function as much as you like. And then we'll go through a bit of an advice giving exercise, and that's all I'm going to say about that for now. I think this is kind of a fun way to end it, and then we'll talk about the other sessions that are going to be happening throughout the week. So without further ado, we're going to jump into our speaker reflections, and our first speaker is Kim Mallee. So Kim, please let me introduce you as a bit of a bio, and then I'll hand over to you to do your 5-minute reflection. So Kim is the director of the Community Power Agency. She works nationally with local governments. She has extensive experience in REZs, or renewable energy zones, and she's recognised as a thought leader in the sector, particularly in the areas of community benefits sharing and community engagement. Trained as an environmental engineer, Kim previously worked across NGO and local government sectors in sustainability, carbon accounting, and solar data analysis. This is a good time for me to hand over, Kim. She believes the energy transition offers, excuse me, offers an opportunity to strengthen regional economies while powering Australia with clean energy, that community participation and First Nations partnerships are central to realising that vision. And Kim, over to you.
Thanks so much, Erin, and thanks everybody for coming today to chat about this topic. It is without a doubt probably my most favourite thing to work with local governments and the energy shift, which comes from my first career, which was 15 years in local government in the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. The last 5 years I've been working for Community Power Agency, and we're a not-for-profit co-op that works with communities, councils and state and federal government, as well as the industry, to find ways that really push forward community participation to make sure that the energy shift is not only fast for what we need for the climate, but really importantly fair and accessible to everyone, making sure that we're all coming along on this journey together. So Community Power Agency, we've been going for 14 years, and we have had the honour of working with local governments across Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland on the energy shift, particularly over the last 5 years. Um, and I have been in so many uh, workshops and kitchen table conversations and market stalls and different things on the ground in renewable energy zones, and just seen the brilliance of what local government leadership means for the communities that are experiencing the energy shift. And in no one council I have seen is doing leadership in every single area that needs to happen, and nor would we expect that. But I'm really excited to share some of the examples that I've seen, and maybe that will be really important for the part of the energy transition that maybe you as a council on the call are looking at, or also some insights for state government. And I think really simply, the 5 things that I want to touch on today is looking at like how councils understand where they fit in the energy system. It's super complex. I like to say that a basic understanding of who's who in the energy zoo makes it a lot easier for us to advocate and communicate the process, and local government being able to fit themselves in where that sits and know which parts they have jurisdictional rights over and which parts really need to fall into their advocacy and using their strategy and wit to create outcomes for their community, is really, really helpful. And I think that really flows on to seeing the kinds of leadership that we're seeing from councils in their strategy development. Now, local government, we are really good at writing a plan. Like, that's a well-flexed muscle for us in local government, is to be able to write a good strategy and balance the different needs of different stakeholders across our LGA. The energy shift really pushes us to look outside our local government act jurisdiction, because the energy shift impacts our whole community, our whole local economy, our whole health system, and a whole bunch of other levers. And I think that, so having examples like Hayshire Council and their fundamental principles for renewable energy development, or the Wellington Energy Impact Readiness Assessment, these are the types of strategies that councils are producing that are really leading their communities forward. Councils, we've seen, have a really great role in making sure local SMEs, the businesses, and their larger businesses that they have in their LTAs get a fair share of the contracts opportunity. And the Toowoomba Surat Basin Enterprise Group, which is not a council-driven group, they've got a great example where they worked with Wombo Wind to create a supplier register and make sure that local businesses were getting the opportunities. Or for another example we've seen is how the New England councils participate in the New England Skills and Workforce Group, which was established by the regional stakeholders, not by the state government in that particular instance, to be able to get skills development on the table really early in the RES rollout in the New England. Social license is a really, really big one, and I want to be really clear about this. I've said there's a wonderful opportunity for council to own the narrative, and that I'm not saying that council needs to get the brass band and the pom-poms out for renewable energy projects and be the advocate for the energy transition. What I really am excited to see is when councils are strong narrative holders for a great process, and being able to show that leadership gives community a platform to be able to work within a solutions frame discussion. And the communities that have councils that are being really proactive in that narrative holding space are able to progress the conversation further than where we have a vacuum of information, and then folks start making up their own stories. It can get quite hot-headed without that framing of a solutions based process. So been really excited to see how some councils have taken that line with holding the narrative without compromising support or withdrawn support from any particular project. How am I going for time, Erin? I think maybe 30 seconds. Wrap it up. Benefit sharing is obviously a huge part to play, and This concept has built over the last decade, particularly in the wind industry, coming from the resources sector, and it rests on the notion that the sun, wind, and water are natural resources, and the monetization of those resources in a region deserves to be shared with the community that hosts them. There is lots of complexity in the intersection between benefit sharing and impact mitigation, and being able to navigate that. Some councils are being thrust into navigating this based on state instruments that are being applied, and others are needing to make show their own leadership, navigating it as they see fit with industry best practice. We've done a lot of thinking about this and published a guide on regional benefit sharing, which we can provide some links to, and always happy to talk to folks. And in that, through our work on the ground with councils and also with industry, we've developed a short course with Griffith University to be able to upskill folks really quickly so councils can tell the difference between a Ferrari version or a Corolla version of a benefit sharing program or a community engagement program in the renewable energy sector, when maybe councils have not had to assess this for wind, batteries or solar in the past. There's some training that they can undertake.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Such a wealth of knowledge across the country, and the strengths that local governments have in the energy shift. Thank you for sharing that. For our audience today, these slides will be made available, so you'll be able to see this beautiful rainbow again. But also Kim's going to share some links in the chat. Well, I think via Matt, but she'll share some links in the chat with you as well. Thank you, Kim. And great keeping to time, by the way. Our next speaker that we have in our session today is Nicole. So Nicole's the Executive Manager Policy from the Western Australian Local Government Association, or WELGA. Nicole's responsible for policy development and advocacy across priority areas for the Western Australian local government sector, such as environment, waste, emergency management, community development, planning, buildings, and economics, or water portfolio, Nicole. Most recently, Nicole has led WELGA's work in relation to the renewable energy transition, including the development of advocacy positions and a community benefit and engagement guide. Great to hear from you, Nicole, and thank you for being here. Over to you.
Thanks, Erin, and thanks to Capire as well for the invitation to participate today on what I think is just a really important topic. And shout out at least to Sean Fletcher. I saw Sean, you were online from Victoria Plains, and any other WA local governments that are online as well today. So as Erin said, my name's Nicole, and I head up the part of WELGA that has been going along on a journey with our local governments with regards to the energy transition. And just for a little bit of context, so the WA Local Government Association is a not-for-profit representative body for 139 local governments in Western Australia. Our local governments are really diverse, and particularly in the context of the energy transition, we've got some very small local governments with small populations and small rate bases, right through to some larger local governments that have got more diverse and larger populations as well. In the renewable energy transition, WELGA has sought to be a really strong advocate for our member local governments who are at the forefront of the energy transition, as well as providing advice and practical support directly to the sector. And it's really in that nuance and right at that joining up of the political process and the policy development process, but also addressing the practical needs, concerns and aspirations of our members. And I would say that this issue has really activated our local governments who are going to be in the regions that are hosting many of the projects that will be central to Western Australia achieving its ambitions for reducing emissions and increasing renewable energy, unlike any other issue that I've been involved in Western Australia. And we're also very keenly and have been observing what's been going on in the East Coast. And I guess we have the slight advantage of being a little bit behind what's happening in other states and territories and seeing what is working well and what isn't. And you'll just see on that slide there, and I guess we'll go to what I'm about to say, that my most central reflection in the work that we've done to date here is that local governments and communities need to be at the centre of the transition. And I think we've already heard that, and we'll hear it again from others. If we're to achieve targets around reducing emissions, if we're to realise benefits, importantly, if we're going to manage impacts, local communities and local governments must be at the centre and have this done with them and not to them. Large-scale renewable energies, no surprise to anyone, can raise really complex issues in the communities where they're located, and they can be divisive. Good leadership, I see this in many local governments across Western Australia, where local governments are helping to unite and educate their communities. They are experts at listening, getting good information, foreshadowing risks and seizing opportunities. An example that I'll give you would be the Shire of Narrogin. So it has a population of only 4,800. It's got 11 large-scale facilities in the pipeline with a combined investment value of more than $18 billion. The Shire has provided a dedicated series of web pages to fill the information gap in their communities. They've organised forums with developers. The local community advocated to state government and developed a series of local policies detailing clear expectations for developers. And I guess I'd shout out to many of the local governments for us in the Midwest and the Wheat Belt region of Western Australia, who have actually, as well as pursuing their own advocacy and work in this area, are working very closely together to present a united front to decision makers in this space as well. While the local governments are tackling this independently from each other, WELGA has played a role to support these local governments and also to step in to be that united advocate to state government around the priorities for local governments in this area. Our experience here has been the power of collaboration. So this issue first came onto the agenda for local governments, I would say, about 3 years ago in a significant way. And such is the nature of local government. This has come up through individual local governments, through to our zones and through to WELGA State Council. And through that, we have worked with our members in a number of streams of work to support them and advocate for what they need. So consulting extensively with the sector to understand their concerns and their aspirations, working with them to distill that into very clear advocacy priorities that set out those local government expectations to government. And that is around the need for a comprehensive framework in Western Australia to manage the impact of the energy transition, local engagement, and the realisation of local community benefits as a priority. In Western Australia, decision-making around these large-scale renewable energy projects will often not rest with local governments. They will, at the lowest level, probably sit with our development assessment panels, but more likely go through what the state calls a significant development pathway. Local governments will not have a decision-making role if that occurs. So central to local governments' needs in this area is having a planning framework that actually takes account of the implications of the projects from a planning perspective, assesses those appropriately and conditions them appropriately. More work needs to be done around prime agricultural land in terms of where the project should go. And importantly, the ability of local governments to rate these projects. We know that there will be additional costs to local governments. And so local governments need to be able to rate these projects appropriately and also have a commitment from the government around the implementation of a payment in lieu of rates. So that's our advocacy space here. And those advocacy positions are owned by all of our members, and WELGA will advocate on those to state government, but our individual members advocate around those as well. On the practical side, so our members were telling us we need the state government to do the kinds of things that I've indicated in those advocacy positions. Where we were in the political process, those things were not necessarily happening in a way that met the pace of development of these projects and the discussions that were going on out in communities around these projects. So WELGA have stepped in to seek to assist our members, to have conversations with proponents, to think about the way that they might want to construct negotiations and how they might want to formulate their thoughts around community benefits. So we worked with Projects JSA and consulted with the sector around the development of the guide, and you can see that there, and also developed practical templates for the sector. And I'll put all of those links in the chat later. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Erin.
Perfect. Thank you, Nicole. I think I don't think 5 minutes is actually anywhere near enough time.
Sorry if I went over time.
I've been thinking that already. This is the first time we've trialed the 5-minute thing. And it's just not enough time for the wealth of experiences we have in the room, but just speaks to how important these conversations are. I have a lot of questions for both Kim and Nicole, but I'm not seeing anything pop up in the Q&A as of yet. So if you've also got questions as we're going through these panel reflections, please pop them in because we'll circle back to them at a later stage in the discussion. Thank you, Nicole. That's fantastic. Okay, we are going to head over and hear from Brad now. So Brad Byrnes is the General Manager of Cabonne Council, which borders the Central West New South Wales Res. West New South Wales Res to the south of Dubbo Regional Council. Brad has been at the forefront of negotiating the challenges and opportunities faced by councils who find themselves very much affected by the Res, but just outside its borders. So Brad brings quite a unique perspective in that sense. Brad has set a vision for the organisation based on performance, adaptability and resilience. Cabonne Council is itself embracing the transition to renewables with the construction of a 2.14 megawatt solar array and a 2 megawatt battery energy storage system. Brad, thank you for coming. Over to you.
Thanks, Erin. And thanks to my former speakers, Nicole and Kim, for setting the bench for local government articulation. It's about to go south, I think. They're very professional and knowledgeable people. So with that forethought, I thought the best way to set the context is the geographic location. We all like to think we're unique in local government. So I thought what makes us unique to a degree is our geographical location. So Cabonne is one of those councils that I get frustrated about, that you hear the name and you think it might be an Italian diaspora suburb in Sydney somewhere, Cabonne, but it's Cabonne out in the central western New South Wales. If you look there, we're classically what they call a donut council. So that blue space in the middle is Orange City Council. So to give you a state context, if you want to go to the next slide, Erin, is just shows you where we are, I believe, in the state of New South Wales. So we're dead, as the central west indicates, we're dead set in the centre. And if you go to the next slide, there's a little bit of a scan of what Cabonne is. It's basically 6,000 square kilometres. We've got about 2,000 k's of road, which is my joy. Our population is about the 14,000, and the other big, I suppose, one of the more different aspects of our local government areas, we don't know real centre of gravity. A lot of councils have a large town and a couple of villages. Where we're based, our biggest villages or towns are 2,500, and we have a number of small villages there. You'll see down the bottom there, we've got Yagara, which you might recall in 2022 we went through some serious flooding disasters, received a fair bit of media, and Molong is the area that I'll be talking a little bit about, which borders the Res. Just to that northern portion there is Wellington. Kim touched on Wellington's got a large renewable energy provision under the Res there that we're sort of being subject to. So that's essentially where we sit. And as your introduction indicated, and I'm coming from this perspective of outside the renewable energy zone, which is, fortunately or unfortunately for me, I've become very prominently aware of that in the middle of all that disaster. We had a large wind coming in an area called Kerrs Creek from the township of Molong, but it was not in our, and we found ourselves very much on the outside looking in of all the machinations that go on when you are subject to being placed near one of these facilities. So we had to learn as a team very quickly at a time where I had one town planner. So, you know, these are the challenges. I know all you people in local government are out there probably having similar challenges with resourcing, but if you're outside the res, for example, you're not given any special resourcing from the state to develop up plans, to have responses. So that's quite troubling. I'm sounding a bit negative here, but I'm telling you what goes wrong.
I don't think that's my internet based on the faces that I can also see. So we might just give Brad a minute and hopefully his internet course corrects itself.
And we're there. Am I still there? Can you give me a thumbs up, Erin? Because
Yep,
I just went
we
out.
got you.
So, you know, it was quite frustrating that the federal government leaders, well, not the government at the time, were suggesting to our community that council was in a position to prevent this from happening. So I suppose to pick up on Nicole's point and Kim's point, what we've got to be really cognizant of where we sit in the process, and if we do have agency or not, or a more crucial term is leverage. And when you're outside the res, without a very vocal response from your community that gets the attention of government, you don't have much agency. But we took it upon ourselves to meet with the Department of Planning, who refreshingly revised their guidelines right at the time we were meeting with them to recognise, I suppose, the problems that we've got to navigate as a council next door to a large wind farm or solar farm. So they are listening to a degree, but I would just suggest that that's the biggest challenge that we have as local government is, whilst we in one essence we want to be advocating and representing our communities, but we also have the reality of what power we have as an entity, as a council, in trying to overturn or at least get a seat at the table. And it's quite problematic when you're not right in where it's happening. And I know Hayes done a very good job down there as well in the res as a small council, but I think everywhere is starting to struggle with this. And I won't take up much more time because I am conscious of time, but I'll leave it there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brad. I did have a slight panic for a second. I thought we were going to lose you, but we're back on deck. That's great. No, thank you for that. And thanks for bringing that perspective to the table. Today's all about local leadership in the energy transition, and that just takes so many different forms. So thank you for bringing that in. On to our last, but certainly not least, in our speakers today, Mayor Matt Burnett. Mayor Matt Burnett. Sorry, Matt. Matt was born and raised in Gladstone, with his family's connection to the region extending 6 generations. You probably know some of my family, Matt. A former small business operator and qualified journalist, Matt has served in local government since 2000. He brings an inclusive leadership style, ensuring the views of his fellow councillors, council officers, businesses and industry, community groups and organisations and community members are taken into consideration. Matt is president of the Local Government Association of Queensland and the Australian Local Government Association. Thank you for joining us, Matt, in this discussion, and I'll hand over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Look, I've got my timer on because I will talk over 5 minutes, and I've got a 2-minute video that I really want everyone to see. So I hit start on that now. I'll keep a track of my time, but happy to obviously answer questions as well. But just before we play the video, it's a video that explains where we wanted our community to be. So for those who don't know, Gladstone in central Queensland, we're 600 kilometres north of Brisbane. We are definitely, no doubt, arguably the industrial capital of the state. We have 3 LNG plants, 3 coal-fired power stations within 100 kilometres, one in the middle of the city, 2 alumina refineries, an aluminium smelter. We have Cement Australia, Orica, just some of the major industry here. Some of the biggest energy users in the state. Boyne Smelter alone is probably the single largest user of energy in the state of Queensland, and most draws a lot of that power from the Gladstone power station. Obviously, with this conversation happening, we started the conversation about 2020, 2021 with our community. Now, I can tell you, when we first started the conversation in regional Queensland, as I said, we export coal also around the world. We've got a fantastic port facility, which is one of the the best port facilities in Queensland, if not Australia as well. And so to say to the community, we're preparing our community or our region beyond coal, wasn't necessarily going to be a popular thing, and it wasn't. The first time we brought the conversation up, we could have had the conversation in a subdivided telephone box. But after we went through the process with the Next Economy, we brought Amanda Carhill in and had the conversation with our community, with industry, with unions, with workers, with First Nations locals as well. The next time we hosted a forum, even before we launched it, it was standing room only and people calling me asking how can they get involved. And it's the way we went about it. We didn't say, oh, we're turning off the coal-fired power station and we're stop exporting coal and we're all going renewable. We said this is a journey we need to be on. We are a proud industrial community, and if we want to be a proud industrial community in the years to come, then we need to be providing those products. So for us, I just said to people who would probably boo you at an audience, I said, well, it doesn't matter whether you like a solar farm or whether you like a battery energy storage project or what it might be, or a wind project, because our argument is always the same. Oh, it's taking up this much land, or it doesn't provide ongoing jobs. It's only jobs in operation. And then you hear the jobs are all backpackers, and you can hear all the arguments against it for the rest. And I said, well, park all that. Do you know anyone who works for Rio Tinto? And of course, Rio Tinto is one of their largest asset bases in the world, is in Gladstone. Although Western Australia, shout out Nicole, I did notice they got a nice building over there in Perth. But as I said, those alumina refineries, aluminium smelters are owned by Rio, or a very large percentage of them are. And everyone go, of course I know someone who work in Rio. Well, if Rio wants to sell alumina and aluminium beyond and around the world beyond 2050, they're going to need to be producing green aluminium or green alumina, as in manufactured on green energy. And if it's not made and manufactured on green energy, well, boardrooms around the nation, around the world, are determining that they may not want to buy that product. So you can oppose solar farms all you like, but if you want to see Rio Tinto close down in our community, which would decimate our local economy, then by all means, keep championing other forms of energy. And so we went on how long have I got already? Not too far. We went on a journey with our community to say, come with us. Like, we're not saying close down the coal-fired power station. In fact, I'm the biggest advocate for our coal-fired power station. I want to see it last as long as possible. I'd love to see them spend money, the Queensland government spend money in refurbishing and keeping it going, because I know that to get the renewable energy online in Gladstone is going to take years and years, just to be able to power my local industry, forgetting about the houses across the state. Just to power my local industries, it's going to need significant renewable energy, and that's nowhere near ready, and won't be nowhere near ready, certainly not by 2030 by any stretch of the imagination, maybe by 2050, depending on how fast they move. Let's play the video and I'll show you what we wanted to do with our economy and how we can all make all the industries work together in a circular economy. And then if I got a second left, I'll keep talking.
Thanks, Matt. You may not have too much time left, because I want to make sure that we have time to address some of the audience questions. But can you give me a thumbs up, please, if the sound comes through when I press play on this video?
You either lead or get left
Sound
behind.
coming through?
the energy transition in Australia, the transition, economic transition, decarbonisation, and the change is already here.
Today we launched the Gladstone Region Economic Transition Roadmap for 2022 to 2032. So this will guide our community and our council for the transition we're going to face over the next decade. Council partnered with the Regional Economic Development Agency, the Next Economy, to devise and lead the important engagement process that informed this project.
It's been an absolute pleasure working with the Gladstone Regional Council community and industry over the last 2 years. So we've had amazing engagement from a range of different groups, a lot of industry groups from energy providers through to heavy industry, manufacturers, logistics and transport operators, First Nations groups, workers, environment groups, farmers, training providers. So we've had really great engagement across the community over that time. And people have been really enthusiastic to say what they want for the future, identify those risks and opportunities, and then work out how we're going to work together to do that.
And that's what this transition roadmap is all about, making sure our community's voice is heard and that council will lead the way in terms of transition over the next decade. And my community is very proud of their industrial heritage. They actually said that in many of the community consultation processes. And it's not just identifying our role, it's identifying what the state and federal governments should do to support us. Working with both the state and federal governments, we can further advocate for proper resourcing in the areas of planning and assessment and assure new developments meet community aspirations. Council will strongly advocate for improvements in those services that allow a community to thrive, like affordable housing, the general health care, aged care, and benefit sharing for our First Nation groups. It's housing, it's healthcare, it's aged care, as childcare. Those are very important. Housing crisis we know is happening right across the country, attracting and retaining medical professionals in our region. Those things need to be addressed, and this is a bigger issue.
If you go to Gladstone, just physically looking at it, it's a large port. It's on the rail line as well. There's good road access. You've almost got an unlimited ability to expand up to the north and the west there, which I think is a really important reason why Gladstone makes sense.
This 10-year roadmap is there to inform and guide us based on what our community and other stakeholders have said they want. You either lead or get left behind, and this roadmap gives our community certainty for a successful future. Yeah,
Fantastic.
I'm way over time. Happy to answer more
Here's
questions.
something I prepared earlier, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm over time, but look, yeah, happy to answer all the questions, and hopefully I can clear up some of what any of that people might have missed.
Yeah, I think thank you, Matt. I think we will swing into question time. And please, anybody in the audience, please feel free to ask direct questions of our speakers as well as we go through. And I have a couple.
You either
Not play that again. Hang on, let me just.
lead or get left behind.
Watch it again.
Trying to get back into my PowerPoint. Hang on.
What did I do?
I can't get rid of this amazing video.
Energy transition in Australia, the transition,
Economic transition.
Bear with me a second. While I'm figuring this out, I think I will place a question to our wonderful speakers, and then I'll start moving through. So, given your reflections, you're coming from really different walks of life, different experiences, and in very different local government contexts. What is one thing that you would say local governments, industry, or partners should start doing or stop doing to ensure communities experience the transition as fair and beneficial? So really leaning into the heart of this Just Transition Energy series with this first question. What does local leadership look like? What should we start doing or stop doing to ensure that the transition is fair and beneficial? I'm happy for anyone to jump in to this space. I'm conscious that that we have Kim and Nicole that kind of started us off in the conversation. So I'll open to either of you two in the first instance.
You go, Matt. I saw you already.
No, I don't mind. I can talk all day. So
Me too. That's why I'm going to let you go first. Go on.
What can we or should we be doing? Well, we should be making sure, firstly, you've got to bring your community along the journey. Absolutely have to. And so do the proponents. So for us, some of the good proponents I've seen are the ones that will not just work with the property they want to build on. They work with the neighbours around them and get the neighbourhood supportive. And I've seen that right across Queensland. Projects will fail. Renewable energy projects will fail if they think they're going to put something here and upset everyone else around there, and they're going to go quietly. They need to be collaborative. They need to work together, and they need to make sure they bring the entire community on the journey with them by saying, "Oh, this project's not going to really have much impact on you." Well, that doesn't necessarily matter, especially if it's in a rural community, because we just had my council meeting today where we had to assess a new CBA, and I think we're one of the first community benefit agreements in the state of Queensland, which we approved this morning, the CBA, which now allows it to go to the Queensland government to be approved. Councils in Queensland have all their planning powers, but when it comes to renewable energy projects, at the moment, the state's called them back in. So if you don't bring your community with you, and that the projects that you might want in your community don't bring the community with them, just won't proceed. So it's all about community consultation and community acceptance, and you get that by being fair and reasonable.
I think that's really bang on, Matt. The councils that we've worked with that are actually being able to negotiate more cohesive outcomes from not just industry, individual projects, but actually from state governments and the RES rolls out, for example, in Victoria and New South Wales, are the council areas that have invested in collaborating with the community stakeholders. And when I say that, I mean quite the broad sense as a community. So we're not just sort of saying town hall meetings, we're actually like rolling up our sleeves and having an industry roundtable with our industries within that region. What does housing look like? What does the skills and workforce development need to look like? What are some of the really important health and social sort of social risks that we need to address with large-scale energy coming to our region? So collaboration, I could not wave the flag more enthusiastically to be able to have local government in there just nutting it out, basically. You just got to work it through.
I'll jump in, Erin.
Thanks, Nicole.
So from the perspective of the work that we've been doing with local government, there's a few things that stand out. So working with community to set really clear expectations, being clear about the priorities, particularly in relation to community benefits in your local government area or in your region, working with partners and advocating strongly and loudly.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
I'd just say quickly that probably on another tangent, particularly in the government, state, federal and local, the higher tiers of government, we all know we're childs of the state government and federal government and our constitutions, actually start working with us as partners. I think too much is made out to be a partner, but they treat us as very much a small partner or a very small voice in the partnership, and leave the heavy lifting of the community to us, but everything else is in their hands. And if we're coming at it from the three levels and looked aligned and had leadership aligned, I think the community then will respond to that. But while ever they're playing divisive games up and down the chain, that shows weakness, and then the loud voices in the community that may not be wanting to achieve the outcomes get a louder voice. That's just my little comment.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Some really interesting perspectives in that space as well. I'm going to jump to the chat. There's a message here from Siobhan, and it speaks to some of the threads that you were kind of indicating a little bit earlier around. Siobhan says she's keen to understand if or how local governments are supporting skill uplift in Australia's energy transition. So she's provided an example here that she was participant in the Clean Energy Council's Careers for Net Zero Queensland Roadshow in August. where the Honourable Glenn Butcher MP committed to training and careers pathways for local communities, specifically First Nations people. So the question is around what is local council's role in supporting skills uplift? I can see, Kim, you're leaning into this one already. Go for it.
Thanks, Erin. I think council can have a role to make every part of the energy transition better, and that's prefaced with they're absolutely strapped for resourcing. So I just want folks to understand that I understand that when I just, espouse all these different things that local government can do. But one example that we had was we worked with the local governments in the New England Renewable Energy Zone to put on a Renewable Energy Careers Expo and brought all of the different proponents in the area together to look at work on that. And through the skills and workforce working group, looking at some really sensible things that are going to make it better. Like, what is the sequencing of projects that we can do so we don't only get lots of projects getting their sponsored apprenticeship programs only through their first year of apprenticeship, and then there's another option for the next project, but it's only for first years, and not being able to take that training through the sequences of a project pipeline in a particular area. Looking at the micro credentials, councils working and collaborating with their local TAFEs and universities to make sure not just new jobs, but the transfer of skills can come across from adjacent industries that are shifting, and being able to make sure that local people are looking at those opportunities. And then lastly, I would say that, and maybe I can hand to Matt after this, is that councils have a really important role in working with their communities when they're negotiating their benefit sharing agreements to have the skills and workforce type support added to that, and to be really clear about it. And I noticed when I looked at that CBA, Matt, that your council successfully negotiated 2 apprenticeships plus 1 cadetship, which I was impressed to see.
Yeah. Can I jump in there?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for a shout out for Glenn Butcher, because he's my state MP, and he and I are obviously on the same page. So advocating to state and federal governments to allow this to happen is certainly key to that. And they've got more influence in this particular area, and in particular around that question. But as Kim said, you can do things yourself. So you can include things in your CBA. So my council is very proud of our training our next generation. We've put a lot of new trainees and apprentices on, and particularly in the last 10 years since I was elected mayor, we said, right, we've got to train the next generation. Well, that's the same. You've got to train the next generation of skills that are going to be required. PowerLink, which is a bit of advocacy from our behalf as well. I've got a new training facility, not the original training facility that they were going to have, but still having a new training facility happening here in Gladstone, training all new lines, men and women, and electricians. But we actually, as a council, put our money where our mouth is as well. And we do support, as you said, your TAFE and uni. Kim, our TAFE and uni is a dual sector university, so they're on the same campus. So you've got academics and boilermakers working in the same facility, and we've actually funded or part funded the support of a hydrogen professor. So that allows upskill of people learning more about hydrogen in Gladstone. Now we put out, councils don't pay for university professors' salaries, but we did that because we wanted to make sure the position came to Gladstone, so that we could then train our next generation of people who will be working in the hydrogen sector, which we know is going to happen here. Obviously, Sumitomo project with Rio Tinto, and then the Australian Gas Infrastructure Group project, and other things that are happening, applications with Hydrogen Head Start now. So we've said, yep, here's some money from us for a couple of years. We'll help support this role, and that'll help get the next lot of education. Actually, they developed curriculum and all the rest of it for the university. So councils, so we're reasonably large size council compared to many across the country. So if you can afford it, you should definitely do it. But if not, it's the advocacy of state and federal governments to make sure that they're doing it, or you put it in your community benefit agreements if you have the opportunity to do that, and say to these proponents, hey, if you're coming to our town, what are you doing to train the next generation as well?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt, and to the other speakers on those topics. It's amazing to me that we are almost out of time in our session, and I know that at least one of our speakers needs to drop off right on the hour. So I'm going to take us to the next component of this because I'm quite excited about it, and I want to hear what our speakers have come up with. So Matt Gordon, who is currently navigating the slides because my computer did something really strange after that video. Can you flick to the slide around a short piece of advice? So that's slide 21. So to close our session, what I've done is I've invited speakers to offer one short piece of advice in response to the question that you should see on your screens shortly. But how can we respect our communities and demonstrate strong local leadership and ensure a just transition? And because we are largely a local government crowd here today, I'd like to request, or I'd like to request the speakers to provide their piece of advice in the form of an acronym, because we know how much local government love their acronyms. So feel free to drop your acronym in the chat around your piece of advice for Australia's just energy transition. But I'd love to hear now what our speakers have come up with. And we'll jump to you first, Brad, because I know that you've got to jump off in a couple of minutes.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I thought briefly, I use this acronym a lot. It's got a bit of, well, you don't have to have a potty mouth, but it's get shit done, or GSD, get stuff done. And if you want to get communities offside, be seen to not act. That could be act on their behalf. It could be act for getting infrastructure itself. But the longer you self-analyse and pontificate amongst yourselves before being seen to act, raises anger in the community. So whether it be for or against whatever the transition is, if you do what sometimes is deep in local government culture is, okay, we'll just kick this down the road for a couple of meetings before we'll wait long till we have to. I think that raises community angst, and you're better off jumping in and getting cracking on whichever aspect we just talked about, and being visibly doing so. That's what I'd say.
Great. And there was a theme yesterday through the plenary session, which was around outcomes, getting outcomes, moving forward.
Getting stuff done is a nice way of saying it.
Getting stuff done.
It's the same acronym.
I love that, Brad.
GSD.
Thank you. And we'll jump to you, Nicole. I can see that you've popped your acronym in the chat for the panelists. We'll put that in the chat for everybody as well. So tell us about yours.
So AI was my friend on this one. I'm going to admit it up front. So COMPASS is the acronym. So communicate clearly and early, organise community voices, manage impacts and expectations, partner constructively, activate economic benefits, safeguard infrastructure and services, and steer towards a united community position.
Wonderful. I love that. COMPASS. Fantastic. I think, Matt's popped that in the chat. That's great. Brad, I did promise you we'd be done 5 o'clock on the dot. I know that this recording will be available for people. So I am going to take us a little bit over time.
5 more minutes.
But you've got 5 minutes. Okay, you want to hear the other acronyms. All right. Let's head over to you, Kim, and what have you got for us?
So my acronym is WIT, which is we're in it together. So a little took liberty there with the actual spelling of WIT. But this is something that's really comes up a lot in my conversations with councils. Often I hear from councils a sense of disempowerment by the lack of jurisdictional authority over the energy shift that is happening to them. And I want to reassure them that whilst that is true, and I'm not going to say it's not true, that I have seen time and time again councils create amazing outcomes for their community through their wit, and being able to just roll up your sleeves. Couldn't agree more, Brad, and just get some stuff done, get some folks in the room around the table and nut it out. regardless of what the state's doing, regardless of what the feds are doing, you're going to create a better outcome for your community just by having a go together.
Wonderful. And I love how succinct it is. Thank you, Kim. And again, last but not least, Mayor Burnett, give us your acronym, please.
Thank you. I've just sent it through. I tried it. It was all coloured, but it doesn't come up coloured in the thing. So the acronym is LEAD, and it is what we do. We believe we're doing here in Gladstone, Central Queensland, and it's leading by example. So the L is listening to your community, enabling local jobs, acting transparently about change through visible leadership, and divisive action for the D. Lead. Lead the way.
Wonderful. Fantastic. And thank you for rising to that challenge. We also got another acronym through in the chat from Cabonne. So FEPIC, free, prior and informed consent. So we also got a link, so check that one out too. Thank you so much to the speakers that we've had in this session today. We wanted to reach far and wide across Australia, get lots of diverse perspectives in coming from really different places, because we knew that people who would attend this session, we are all starting, or we're all situated at a really different point in time. And we believe that the speakers we've got on board are going to be able to provide you with a sense of agency in local government and the work that you can actually do to create a just and equitable energy transition. So thank you so much for the speakers that have come along today. Coming up in the series, so today is the second of 6 sessions. The next one that we've got coming up is probably another topic that you'd all be quite interested in, but lessons from the field, what's working in renewable energy community benefits. So that is coming up tomorrow. We have a session on community benefits, followed by that. And I believe, because I can't remember which day this is on, I think it's Thursday. We've got Indigenous leadership in the energy transition. So there's some really, really powerful Indigenous leaders in this space that are coming together for a really robust discussion around what Indigenous leadership can look like in the energy transition. The next session we have is energy and agriculture. So powering the land. This is where we're going to have some of those conversations, and we touched on why that's so important today, but really diving deeper into how we actually find that balance between agriculture and energy development. And then the final session that we have happening in this series is around engagement for success. So this will be a facilitated conversation, not a webinar like today, but more of a workshop that people will be able to actually create something from the insights that have come out of the entire series. So definitely, if you can make time to come along to that session, it will bring together all of the conversations that we've had to something that's really practical that we can share with the broader group that have been involved in these webinars. Okay. So lastly, can I please ask anybody who is online, I know I've gotten a little bit over time, but if we'd really love your feedback on these sessions. These are free sessions that we wanted to bring conversations together that are really important. So any feedback that you can provide us, please scan the link and share that with us so that we can continue to develop more and more value into the sessions that we do and the conversations that we aim to have in the industry. Okay. I'll leave that up for a second, but I will wrap us up now. And I wanted to say thank you so much for your time, energy and attention. A massive thank you to our speakers, before coming along and providing their insights and reflections and their acronyms of advice. I think people are going to be walking away all the better for it in their energy transition journey. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.